Awesome. Okay. So again, I'm Samantha Zoika. I'll be doing your Healthy Tuesday webinar for this week. Um, so basically, I just want to give like a brief disclaimer on this Healthy Tuesday before I get started, because this one is a little bit of a touchy subject, and it is something that normally when we do teach in schools, we have a plethora of help. We have social workers that work in the schools. We have social workers that work in the community. We have people who are trained in mental health first aid, not only for adult, but for youth as well. Um, because when we talk about mental health, specifically suicide and signs of depression, and then what that looks like, it can be a very touchy subject for youth and adults. And so I know that it's not quite ideal to talk about suicide over a webinar, and it would be better to talk about it in person, because that's when you can really see the emotions that play out on people's faces when they do learn this curriculum, and you can also be there to reach out for help. So I just want to preface that it is going to be a little bit of a harder topic, um, but what this curriculum is called is it's called Signs of Suicide, which we use SOS for short. And so basically this is a curriculum that is evidence-based. It's used across the country. We use it in our entire school district, and then we also reach out to other youth and adults who may be interested in the curriculum as well. And so it's broken up into a different couple of parts. And so basically there's the video, and the video goes over a couple different scenarios. You will hear people talk about their own experiences with depression and suicide, and they're survivors, they came out of it. And then we also see little reenactments of youth who may be interacting with their peers in locker rooms, whether it's in the hallway or however they're just interacting with their peers. And so we see a really cool way that youth can learn how to witness these signs of depression and how they can actually make an impact and get help for their friends or themselves and advocate for themselves if they are displaying any of these signs or symptoms. So since this is typically, like I said, done in the schools, what we typically do is we will play the clips, and then you'll kind of see the little reenactment scenes. And what we would do is we would pause the video, we would have a discussion with the students of what they saw. If what their peer did was helpful, was it hurtful, how can they effectively get their friend help? And if they did display good ways to get their friend help. And so what we'll kind of do today is, instead of starting or pausing the video and then starting it again, because it's kind of hard with Zoom, is I'm going to play the video, and then I'm going to go through the discussion questions that I would normally do with the peers. So we're going to talk about warning signs and what warning signs to look for in depression. And this can be, depression is universal, but at the same time, everyone reacts to depression differently. So some of the things we're going to talk about is we're going to learn about the signs of depression and what those may look like for different people, what it may look for in youth, and just overall, what are some things that we should be cognizant about when we are interacting with peers. And another thing that we're going to also talk about is the process of getting someone help, because most people aren't trained professionals, and that's fine. The really great thing about being trained in how to look for the signs and symptoms of suicide and depression is that you don't have to be a professional to be able to get help. You'll see that there's an acronym that they use throughout this curriculum called ACT, and it stands for Acknowledge, Care, and Tell. So when we tell the students to act, we tell them to acknowledge that there might be something going on, that their peer is acting differently, that they might be saying things that might be worrisome, that they're not acting like their normal selves. So acknowledging that something may be going on, whether it's just a rough day whether they have something going on in their lives, whether it is actually true depression or not, just acknowledging that there is something happening. And then when we talk about care, it's just being a caring individual towards that person. So, not just telling them to get over it, or it's just a rough day, it'll get better. Actually being there to care for them, to listen to them, to actually show that you are actually interested in what is happening in their lives. And then when we talk about the T, which stands for tell, that stands for tell a trusted adult. And so something that we also talk about with our youth is that trusted adult can be inside school or outside school. It can be your parent, it can be your grandparent, your aunt, your uncle, your school counselor, your teacher, your soccer coach, your pastor. So there's plenty of different trusted adults out there. And so that's the acronym that you'll see throughout the video: acknowledge, care, and tell. And so that's the basis of signs of suicide. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play this clip. It's about 20 minutes long. And then afterwards, I'll go over some of the things that we saw in the little clips, what those warning signs are for. And then I am going to wrap it up by giving you a list of local resources if you should ever need them for yourself, a family member, your child, or anybody else. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you can hear this too.
My name is Connor Lee, and I'm 16 years old. When I was a child, I would say I was very energetic. I was very extroverted. I liked to hang out with my friends a lot. I was diagnosed with ADHD at a pretty young age. There were a bunch of challenging times for me. I was bullied a lot, and I started to hate myself. So the depression sort of started at elementary school age. It didn't get too severe until towards the end of middle school. I actually felt sad like all the time. I just felt drained of like all positive emotion. I wouldn't do schoolwork. I didn't really want to talk to anybody. Every time I got home, I sort of just like laid down and just accepted nothingness.
Feeling sad is usually a temporary thing that's related to something that happened in someone's life or some situation or event. Feeling depressed is when someone is experiencing maybe sad feelings and probably a bunch of other kinds of things that feel bad too over a long period of time, and that it's getting in the way of doing things that people typically like to do.
I felt, even with my friends, I was alone. I wanted to be funny, so I put on a face for my friends, but on the inside I was just hurting. I felt like I wasn't enough for the people around me, and I felt like I could be doing so much more, but I just couldn't. I just started to feel like alone, and that I didn't matter, and that maybe I was just better off, just not being alive.
There you are. You okay?
Yeah, I just don't like gym anymore.
What? But we both love track.
I don't know. I just feel tired. I feel like I have no energy anymore.
For gym?
Not just that. I don't feel like doing anything. I don't feel like going to school, and after graduation, I can't see anything but working the same job I've worked since sophomore year.
But I thought you wanted to be an engineer.
Can you see me as an engineer? Seriously?
Well, what do you see yourself as?
Nothing.
That kind of talk worries me. The way you look worries me. Exhausted, wearing long sleeves when it's hot outside. You know I've seen the marks on your arms.
So I'm a mess. Thanks for pointing that out. You, on the other hand, are getting out of here like everyone else. You even have a scholarship because you're so smart and talented.
I have my own problems, Caitlin. Last year, I had to get counseling. It helped a lot. It showed me that when one thing goes wrong, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, but why would you need counseling? You've got it made.
That's what everyone thinks. Leaves more room to live up to expectations. I even stuck in my own head sometimes.
I get that, but you never act stressed. I never would have guessed that you would.
I was really close to my grandmother. And when she died, I had a really hard time. Sure, I covered it up in school, but it was really hard to get out of bed.
I can relate to that. I'd like to go to bed, fall asleep, and never wake up.
Now that really scares me. Look, the counseling helped. Caitlin, please, talk to someone.
Who?
When I was having problems, I talked to my math teacher, Mrs. Lynch. She helped me set up an appointment with a counselor. That helped me.
Yeah, but you had a death in the family. What's my excuse?
You don't need an excuse. If you're feeling down about something, or you just need to talk, that's enough. You could start with the nurse. You could start with anyone.
Look, I don't like the idea of telling my business to anyone.
I don't think of it like that. I think of it like talking things out, like I used to do with my grandmother. You have to reach out. If you don't, I will.
Please don't. Let me think about it. When I'm ready, maybe I'll talk to someone, but not now. It's not as bad as I made it out to be. I'm just a little down. Just give me time.
All right, just know that you can always talk to me, okay? And promise you won't do anything drastic. Just think about what I said, okay?
Okay. For now, just drop it. I'm just a little down. Just give me time.
You're not just a little down. Take it from someone who's been there. I'm really worried about you. I'm gonna make sure you talk to someone, not just me, someone who can actually help.
I don't know.
Let's go to the nurse. That's a good start. Come on, I'll go with you, okay?
I think because we know our friends, we tend to know when something is a little bit off, regardless of whether or not they openly state that they want help or that something's wrong. So it's important to be empathic and stating that, hey, I am here for you. You're not a burden to me. I want to help you.
My name is Ellie Peltola. I am 20 years old and I was adopted in Brazil. I had a really good childhood. I've lived in a lot of different countries, a lot of different states. In the second grade, we moved across the country and I've been living here ever since.
The summer going into fifth grade, we met at a dance audition and we've been friends ever since. Ellie and I were kind of crazy children. We used to make these little music videos.
From the beginning, she was a joy.
I had a lot of friends, enjoyed connecting with other kids of her age.
I remember from a very young age always being very insecure and always not liking how I looked. Every little thing that people could pick apart about me is what they would do, and it really, really got to me. I was bullied really bad, and because of that, I felt so worthless. I felt like nobody loved me. I didn't care about my hygiene. I didn't care about what I was wearing. I literally just didn't care. When I'm depressed, I physically cannot get out of bed and I feel sick to my stomach. I started to hurt myself when I was around 12 years old and it became a really big struggle of mine. I felt like because I hated myself so much, I felt like I needed to punish myself because I didn't feel like I was worthy and I didn't feel like I was deserving of having a body with no scars on it. So I put myself in situations that I was not comfortable with, but I did it because I felt like I needed to feel wanted by at least one person. The substance abuse, I was using that to feel numb, and there have been times where it's put my life in danger.
Some warning signs that I saw early on was that she didn't really have a plan for the future.
She started becoming very angry. She would, every time we tried to talk to her, she would just close the door, bang the door.
And a little bit more withdrawn and into herself and hiding in her room.
You know, she would just tell me things like she didn't want to live or like she didn't want to be here.
Some of the common myths that exist about suicide are that if you have a conversation with someone about suicide, that you might introduce the idea where it had not been on their mind. And we know that that is not true. Very often, talking about suicide is an indication that someone is seeking help.
This isn't good.
What? What isn't good?
I'm worried about Carmen. Something's up.
What do you mean?
This guy in her drama club was asking me what's up with her skipping rehearsals. He said that when she does show up, it's like she's in her own world, zoned out.
Well, that's how creative types are.
Yeah, but she's got the lead role in this year's big production. How do you just not show up to rehearsals? Plus, she's not really hanging out with us anymore. Something's wrong.
Yes, because there has to be something seriously wrong with anyone that doesn't want to hang out with us.
Then this. She stopped posting anything like a month ago, and I've been texting her since last week, and she just responded this morning.
So?
It said something like, "It's okay, you won't have to worry about me much longer." I've been thinking about that TV show we watched, about the kid who killed himself, and how there are almost always warning signs, but you don't realize it until it's too late.
Okay, if she had actually said something about, killing herself, then I'd be just as worried as you. But at this point, you're kind of just jumping to conclusions.
You think?
Yeah, maybe she just doesn't want you to worry. She's probably talking to other people, or she's just tired of high school plays. You should think twice before reporting her to the counselor.
You think I'm overreacting?
Yes, you are.
I don't know, maybe you're right. I'll check in with her later and see how she's doing. And I'll leave Mr. Matthews out of it for now. Yeah, maybe I was jumping to conclusions. Maybe I should have minded my own business. But you know what? That was a risk I wasn't going to take. I'm gonna do it. I'll tell him about Drama Club and what I told you, and we'll let him decide what to do.
Carmen's not gonna like this. I know I wouldn't.
Like it or not, I'd do the same for you. I waited outside the office so I could catch Carmen and explain why Mr. Matthews wanted to talk with her. James was right. She didn't appreciate it. She accused me of betraying our friendship and invading her privacy. She didn't hold back. I stayed calm and I told her that I was worried about her and that I cared about her a lot. I told Carmen I'd be waiting for her outside, that we could talk later if she wanted. Or not. It was up to her.
Hey, Carmen, come on in. I saw you in the musical last year. I had no idea you could sing like that.
Thanks, but I know that's not why I'm here.
You're right. I guess a couple of your friends are worried about you.
Angelina told me.
Why do you think she's concerned?
I don't know. She said something about how I was skipping rehearsals and not answering her texts, not hanging out with her as much, things like that.
Well, things like that are often signs that you're struggling with something you might need help with. All kinds of students need help for all sorts of reasons. That's why I'm here. Carmen, Angelina also mentioned a text that really had her concerned.
Yeah, I know.
When you're ready, I want to talk more about that. I'm here to help. You're not alone. So, can we talk?
A lot of people worry that if they go tell an adult on their friend, that their friend's going to be really mad at them. And the thing is, sometimes friends are a little upset at first, but usually in the long run, people feel super grateful that someone cared enough to get them help.
Luke? Whoa, are you drinking? Did you steal that from Dad's liquor cabinet?
He's your dad, not mine.
Okay, well, our mom and my dad are gonna be home on Monday, and you trashing the house is just gonna give them one more thing to fight about.
Think how happy they'd be if I wasn't here. Just the two of them and perfect little Sydney.
I wish you wouldn't keep saying that.
It's true. Mom wishes I was someone else. She wants the football games and the prom pictures with a girlfriend.
Okay, so Mom's old-fashioned. Look, I know not being accepted for who you are really hurts.
How would you know? Mom has that shelf full of all of your soccer trophies. She tells everyone about all your straight A's.
Why are you attacking me? It's like you're angry all the time.
Yeah.
No wonder you're getting in trouble at school.
I know. I'm the problem in this family. There's no me, no problem, right?
Okay, you're scaring me. You need to talk to someone.
About what? Getting drunk? Yeah, I'm sure that'll go over well.
Yes, and about school, and about how you're sleeping all the time. This is the first time I've seen you awake this weekend, and look at you. I'm not trying to be mean, Luke. I'm worried about you.
You don't get it. Who would I talk to? No one gets it.
Well, what about Uncle Jeff? He wasn't perfect in high school. You heard the story about how he crashed the family car? I'm sure he'd understand.
The first thing you do is tell Mom.
We could text that crisis line that we learned about in school.
Whoa, what crisis? Look, I'm drunk. Don't worry about what I said. I'll take care of the mess. Please, just leave me alone.
Promise me you won't drink like this again. And try to talk to somebody. If you promise to do those things and actually do them, we'll see where this goes.
Just please leave me alone.
No, I'm not gonna leave you alone. You're my big brother, and I'm scared to see you like this.
I feel like I'm falling apart, Sydney.
That's what a crisis is, right? Look, I'm gonna text the crisis line, and I'd feel better about it if you said you were okay with it.
Yeah. What happens next?
I don't know, we'll figure it out. Your turn.
It's really intimidating to go to get help. That's like an understatement. Like, it is so hard to admit that you have a problem and to be able to ask someone if they can help you.
It was late at night and Ellie called me talking about how she was about to kill herself. And I was really scared, I was really nervous. And I went to my mom crying and I asked her for help, and my mom texted her parents.
So that's when we got into action to try to find ways to help her.
When she asked me not to tell anybody, I would either be like, oh yeah, sure, I'm not gonna tell anybody, and tell somebody, or I would just tell her straight up and be like, hey, I have to tell somebody so you can get better and so you won't be in this position anymore.
To be honest, I was mad at her for about a week. It really didn't last that long. And in the end, I thanked her because she saved my life.
I think I was a friend. I think that's what I did.
It was so beneficial having that one person who, she didn't understand what I was going through, but she never left my side.
My girlfriend at the time, she decided that she would take initiative and she would go talk to the school counselor. At that point, I was starting to feel suicidal. I talked to her about it a couple times. One of the things the school counselor made me do was she handed me a paper to ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel on most days? How many times have you had suicidal thoughts? Which really made me see that this was much bigger than I had thought it was before. I was tired of hiding, so I made a post about it, telling everyone how I was actually feeling and that I had been portraying this character to them and it wasn't actually me. It got a lot of support, and I think it helped make me feel better.
So, the majority of people who are thinking about suicide have something like depression, either depression or some other mental health condition going on. Depression is definitely something that is treatable, and people feel much better afterwards. So there are different ways that people can feel better. One of them is by taking medication. Sometimes it's also by going to counseling and talking to someone to talk through problems or to think about other ways to cope.
So some healthy coping strategies would be connecting with others. So making sure that you're not isolating yourself, but that you're spending time with your friends. Exercising as well. So if you're an athlete, just making sure that you're continuing to take part in those activities, as well as journaling. So if you're someone who likes to write, using that as a mode of self-expression.
I went to therapy, and the first session I felt very awkward. Like I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to talk about it. It did help though. Getting to actually talk about it, even though it was awkward, getting to say how I felt to someone. I am in a good place now, and the things that help me are theater is a big one, because that's my passion. One of the bigger parts of my life is that I play guitar. I also use it, just like theater, as another way to find an escape, to go home and I can play guitar and I can be happy with that. And I'm really happy that I can be myself and be who I want to be.
I really benefited from therapy. In movies, depression, they make it seem like, your world is black and white all the time. And that's not true at all. Depression will always be something that I have, but it's definitely, the color has started to come back. And I still live my life authentically having depression. I learned about coloring and painting and anything art related. And that was actually one of the biggest coping skills that I used. My room has all these different posters that I've made, and I felt like working with my hands was really helpful for me.
She loves life and loves life now. She has come a long way, and yes, I am very proud of her. She's a joy in our lives.
I think she has already proven that she can live and others can live with mental health challenges.
Because without the help, my daughter wouldn't be here now. And I won't be here to tell you the story about how wonderful daughter she is.
I had a really hard time seeing that there were people out there who loved me. And I think that that is a really big thing to remember, is that you are loved.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that video. I think it's a pretty good one, and I think it does a good job at showing the good ways to interact with someone who may be struggling, but also the things that we might tend to do if we're not cognizant of the warning signs and we don't know what to do. So I'm just going to go over like a couple of like the discussion questions of what we would talk to the youth if we were doing this presentation in the schools. So one thing is we would talk about the warning signs. So the warning signs that we saw in all of the scenarios, whether it was with Connor or Ellie, the two who were the, I guess, real life depictions of depression, but also in the little reenactments too. So we've seen all these warning signs in every single form. But some of the ones that we saw that were very common were self-hatred, feeling sad all the time, feeling drained or tired, stopped doing schoolwork or even things that they love to do in extracurriculars, withdrawing from friends and family and feeling alone even when surrounded by friends, and then feeling like a burden, that they weren't feeling like they were enough for people around them. So I think that Whether or not we saw every single one of those warning signs, or if we just saw a handful of them, a lot of those were very much commonalities in all of the scenarios. So Connor, the boy who was very into music and he was doing theater, he said that he was bullied a lot. And so we'll go into and we'll talk about, can bullying cause depression and can it cause suicide? And can it impact it more if you're already at risk for suicide and depression? So it's a common myth that bullying can directly cause suicide, but it can also, it can attribute to one of the things of depression and suicide. So while suicide is generally not caused by one thing, getting bullied or bullying other people increases a person's risk for suicide. Even students who may observe but do not participate in bullying report feelings of helplessness and a less sense of connection with adults. So that is also an important factor too, is to remember that it may not be the youth being bullied directly, it may not be someone saying those hurtful words directly to you, but witnessing those hurtful interactions can also put someone at risk for depression as well. So when we talk about the difference between feeling sad and depressed, especially when we talk with a lot of our middle schoolers of, well, I've been sad for 2 days, am I depressed? Or I've been sad for a week, am I depressed? So where do we draw the line with sadness and depression, which is a great question. So feeling sad is often temporary, while depression lasts for at least 2 weeks or longer. Depression is more than the blues or the blahs. It is more than the normal everyday ups and downs. When that down mood, along with other symptoms, lasts for more than a couple of weeks, these may be a sign of depression. So we always talk with them and say, you know, did you have a rough day because maybe you did not do that well on a math test? And maybe you got grounded, or maybe it was just because you really wanted a good grade on that. It's okay to feel sad over that. That's a normal thing. But if you got a bad grade on something and you're now beating yourself up over it for weeks on end, that would be an example of something that could be a larger problem than just typical sadness. Depression is a serious health condition that affects the whole person, mind, and body. In addition to feelings, it can change or affect behavior, physical health and appearance, academic performance, thinking, social activity, and the ability to handle everyday decisions and pressures. Depression can lead someone to isolate themselves from their friends and lose interest in activities that they once enjoyed doing. So we saw that in the second reenactment clip when Carmen decided not to go to practice and rehearsals anymore. Depression can lead to thoughts of death or suicide, so it's very important to get help if you're feeling signs of depression. So the very first scenario with the two girls in the locker room, they were talking again about different signs that she was seeing in her friend that may put her at risk for suicide. So a couple of the other signs that we saw were, again, the lack of energy and not interest. So she just said that she just feels tired. I feel like I have no energy anymore, and I don't feel like doing anything. Feeling trapped and hopeless. So she said, after graduation, I can't see anything but working the same job I've worked since sophomore year, and I can't see any way out. So we call this tunnel vision. It's that there's only one thing at the end of the tunnel, and there's nothing else. There's nothing else there for them. So this is my only way out. I can't see any way else that my life can get any better. It's just this black and white tunnel that they're falling through. Negative self-talk. So when she was talking about seeing herself as nothing and she was a mess. And then I don't know if you caught this, but her friend said that she notices the scars on her arms. So when we talk about self-injury is not the same as a suicide attempt, but people who self-injure are at a higher risk for suicide and always should get help from an adult. Self-injury is a mental health concern that can be treated, and there are people in the school who are trained to help students who self-injure. So every single school social worker, school counselor, any adult who is trained in mental health first aid is helped or is equipped to handle these types of situations. So moving on to a couple different myths. So there is 2 myths about suicide. If someone's talking about suicide, that they won't really attempt it is the first myth. And the second one is asking someone if they're thinking about suicide might put the idea in their head. So if someone's talking about suicide, it's often an indicator that they need help. Asking someone if they are thinking about suicide can be one of the most helpful things you can do, because it gives that person the opportunity to talk to someone about how they're actually feeling. So if someone is not suicidal, maybe they're just having a rough week, it's just been a long week at school or at work, if you ask them blatantly if they are thinking about suicide, they will often tell you no if they are in fact not thinking about suicide. It does not plant the seed in their head. It does not give them the idea. It does not give them the okay to do it. But instead, it opens up that door for them to actually talk about it. Because most times people are not comfortable enough to ask that question and to even bring it up, because it is such an awkward topic to bring up. It's somewhat taboo in some ways, and most people don't want to bring it up on their own. So typically people are relieved when that topic does come up, because it does give them access to open that door and to get help. So this is another thing that we talk to about students, is the angry reaction from Carmen's friend. So Carmen was the girl who was speaking with the teacher. She was skipping out on rehearsals, and her friend went and told an adult by herself because her friend did not want to get help. And so a lot of youth come to us saying, well, what if your friend is mad at you because you go and tell an adult and they don't want to be friends with you, they don't want to talk to you anymore? And something that we always say is, would you rather have your friend be here and they be mad at you for a couple days, or would you not have your friend around? And the thing is people will, maybe they will be mad, but the thing is your friend will be very relieved that you reached out to get them help, and they will see that that they have a valuable friendship, that you are caring for them. So this is one of the biggest barriers for students who are worried about a friend. That is the concern that their friend will be angry with them or even hate them for reporting or tattling on them to an adult. And it's true, some people will be mad. However, most teens will come around and are almost always grateful after the fact that someone cared enough to see what was really going on to get them help. Even if they stay angry, it's better to have a friend be angry and alive than do nothing at all. So that's why we always encourage students to even use the approach of, if you don't want to go tell an adult, maybe we can do this together. I really care about you. I think if you had me there as your support system, it would make it a lot easier if we went there together, and to make it sort of a friendship thing to go tell that trusted adult. So just moving into the substance abuse of the last one. So substance use, including drinking, is a major risk for suicide. People often drink or use drugs in an attempt to cope with intense emotional pain. Using substances lowers inhibitions, meaning that someone under the influence is more likely to make rash or impulsive decisions. It can also encourage black and white thinking or tunnel vision, where the person may feel like there's no way out of the pain they are experiencing. Alcohol and other substances can make it harder for someone to access healthy coping skills. And this goes a lot also for sudden substance use. So maybe someone who hasn't ever drank before, they were completely sober, and all of a sudden there was a sudden urge to use substances, whether it's alcohol or drugs or marijuana. that sudden use or increased use or abnormal patterns of use as well can be an indicator for depression, because that's something that they might be using to cope. And then lastly, so Connor, again, the student who was very into musical theater and guitar, he said at the very end that he opened up on social media about how he was feeling. And so I know sometimes as adults, we look down on social media, or we don't understand social media, or we don't understand the earlier generation of social media and how they're using it, because the reality is they're using it differently than we do. They're not using Facebook, they're not using Instagram as much, they're definitely not using Twitter, and so it might be hard for us to keep up with all the emerging trends of social media, or to not even be connected with them on social media at all. But that can also be a way for youth to reach out, because it may be their only way of an outlet, and having their friends on social media might mean that they can reach out to help through their friends rather than just going straight towards an adult, because that is their way to express themselves. So lastly, before I go over a couple different resources, I just want to talk about a couple different coping skills, just because it is a very heavy topic, and I hope that towards the end of this, I can help you identify that some of the signs of depression and suicide, and that maybe sometimes they're not easy to spot, but they're also not hard to spot either. And the one thing that we can learn from all of this is that we're all equipped to help, whether it's just setting someone up with the crisis line, it's calling our MOST team, it's just reaching out for those resources. So a couple different coping skills, and this can also be applicable to the times of COVID as well too, because a lot of the times when we're sitting at home, we don't have the means to hang out with our friends anymore, and especially for the people who are out of work and the students who are out of school, a lot of people thrive on social interactions, and we don't really realize how much we really need and want social interactions for our own mental and physical health until that was taken away from us. So a couple different coping skills is exercise. Exercise does amazing things for the mind and body. Exercise is known to release dopamine, the happy chemical in your brain. So it floods your brain with happy chemicals, and not only that, it also is super good for your physical health too, especially if you're combining that with healthy eating habits. Keeping a gratitude journal, and I think I might have mentioned this a couple weeks ago on a different Healthy Tuesday, but also you could keep a gratitude journal, you could keep a gratitude jar, you can write one thing down that you like per day, per week, per month, and then it might be fun to go back and look at those at the end of the month, at the end of the year. And that can be something as little as, I cleaned my entire house today and it was fantastic. Or it could be something large of, I organized my entire garage and had a garage sale. So whatever is helping you with your gratitude that day or that week, you can write it down in a journal or a jar. You can write it on a mirror, you can keep it on a sticky note, however you want to document that. Talking with positive people in your life, such as friends, family, and teachers. So I think that we've had to get very creative during this quarantine time, and something that I've noticed that really helps me is not just talking on the phone or not just texting my friends or my family members, but actually FaceTiming them or getting on Zoom with them. At least if you can't be face-to-face, at least you can see someone's face, which might do a little bit of help with that. Deep breathing and mindfulness. We host yoga every Monday, which is posted on our YouTube channel as well. There are tons of apps for mindfulness and deep breathing. There are apps that just have peaceful sounds on it. So just taking 5 minutes a day to turn on your app that sounds like rain coming down, that might be the 5 minutes that you need to just take a deep breath and recenter yourself. Listening to music or playing music, even podcasts. I know that podcasts are really big right now too. So just listening to something that you enjoy, or if you do play instruments, that would be great too. Any other hobbies that you enjoy. So whether it's sports, theater, art, hiking, just anything really that really is self-fulfilling for yourself. And then maybe sharing that hobby with someone else too, because if you're doing art and your child or your friend likes to do art too, that can be a way that you guys can sit down and have a conversation together. You can bond over something like that. The more that you open up the avenues to talk and to make yourself accessible is the best way to get people to be comfortable. So before I end this, I'm going to share one more screen with you with a couple different resources. So the very first number is the crisis call line. This used to be called the suicide hotline, and they, in the last year, I want to say, changed it to the crisis call line. So they changed it to the crisis call line because they didn't want people just calling for suicide, but essentially any sort of crisis. A crisis can mean anything. Like that last little clip with the sister and the brother who was drinking, you know, she was saying, well, this is a crisis. You know, you're feeling this type of way. You may not be verbalizing that you're suicidal, but it sounds like you're having a crisis. So whether that's depression, maybe you don't really know how you're feeling. You don't know if it's depression. You don't know if it's sadness. You don't necessarily have thoughts of suicide, but you really just need someone to talk to get help. This is the crisis hotline. It's 1-800-273-8255. An easy way to remember it is also 1-800-273-TALK. So that is a 24-hour, 7 days a week hotline. It will always be answered. So it doesn't matter if you called at 3 a.m. or 3 p.m. And the cool thing about this line is it will be picked up by someone in the region. So it's not like you're calling someone from Florida and it's a long distance call. It will be someone from Carson City, especially times now of all the craziness going on and all the riots and everything like that. If they know what's going on, and so they know what's happening. If there was ever like a riot in Carson City and, you know, that triggered a crisis, they would understand. They would know what's going on. They would know local resources. They would know how to get you the proper help that you need in the area that you live in. A lot of students and a lot of people prefer the crisis text line, which is totally fine. These ones are about the same call centers. The only difference is you would have to text 741-741. I believe you can text the word talk, but I also believe you can just start texting away your crisis too. The crisis text line is also 24/7. So that one is accessible all the time as well. And again, it is local people. And then lastly is our MOST team. Our MOST team stands for Mobile Outreach Service Team. And it is comprised of a deputy from Carson City Sheriff's Office and also a licensed clinical social worker. So Becca Bach, who is the licensed clinical social worker, and Dawn Gibson, who is the deputy. So they are equipped to handle any sort of crisis as well. So if there is something that is happening immediately in your household, if you have a child in the home that they come to you and say, hey, my friend said X, Y, and Z, I don't know how to get them help. They won't call the crisis line. They won't text the crisis line. They're threatening this immediately. If you call that number, it immediately goes to them, and then they will actually do a visit wherever they are. So just try to get as much information as you can of location, address, who it is, and they go out and they can actually help with any sort of crisis that might be happening. And that is specific for Carson City as well. So those are the 3 resources that I wanted to leave you guys with today. I hope I gave you guys enough time to write them down, but if you ever forget any of these resources, or if you ever want anything more specific to youth, more specific to adults, more specific to any sort of anything like that, you can always find us on our website at www.pcccarson.org, or you can just Google Partnership Carson City. We have a community service directory, and that will give you references to any sort of resource that you might need in any way, shape, or form. So if we don't have any questions, that is all I have for you guys today. Next week, we're going to be talking about mindfulness practices and breathing techniques. I will hopefully have a guest presenter for that one. If not, then it'll be yours truly. But yeah, that is all I have for today, and I hope to see you guys next week.